Welcome to Hockey Talk, NHL, OHL, all things hockey from a Midwestern Ontario perspective. I'm Andy Clark. This is Paul Hillier. We have our genius with the switches, making everything work behind the scenes, Adam Oliveira. And once again, we have another great guest for you in studio, former Hanover Baron, former Oshawa General, former Dallas Star, Jeff MacMillan. Welcome. Thanks for being here, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So you had a fascinating career all over the place, North America, Europe. We're going to touch on all those bases, but let's catch up with what you're doing these days.
I'm working for courier service out of town here at ATS and just driving around making deliveries and listening to the radio.
And still getting a few games of hockey in too?
Still playing some hockey in the senior league here and keeping busy.
Playing for the Durham Thundercats?
Playing for the Thundercats and not the last couple of years, but a few years before that I was going down to Dundas and playing with the real McCoys down there a little bit too.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years after your Thundercat season would end up, you'd went with the McCoys. Mm-hmm. Probably one of the big highlights there, obviously, is winning the fabled Allen Cup.
Yeah, it was quite a week. It was a busy week. Like the amount of games they just kind of cram at you at once is kind of overwhelming when you're at it, but it was a blast and obviously a chance to win a championship. You jump all over it. Yeah,
there was a time back in the original 6 days when there was so few NHL teams and so many good Canadian hockey players where the Allen Cup pretty much rivaled the Stanley Cup in prestige.
And even I think at one point it was whoever won the Allen Cup maybe represented their country, like Canada, for the Olympics or something. I'm not
in the Olympics or
I'm not
World
positive
Championships.
On that, but yeah, it was something like that.
I do know for sure the World Championships, and I think you're right. I'd have to fact check that, but I think you're right. They got to represent Canada in the Olympics. We had Jim Connolly, who was a former resident of Hanover, wasn't born here, but he lived here for 37 years, and he played for Canada in the Olympics. And I think it was through that his team had won the Allen Cup. We just had a beauty picture of you on the screen there too. Maybe Adam will flip it back up there. With your was that the season after, or was that the actual during the tournament?
That's the season. That's the tournament there probably, and it was. Like I said, it was a great week. I got to play against some ex-teammates of mine that were playing for. One was playing for Bentley, which I think was Alberta. Guy I played with in Hartford, so he was there and. It was just nice to see some old faces that if it wasn't for this tournament, there's a chance I might not ever cross paths with them again. So the hockey world goes round and round.
And certainly when we're talking about senior hockey, something we've said on the show quite often is I think it's an underappreciated level of hockey as far as fans could maybe access it a little bit more. I know in Durham you guys seem to fill the arena. There's a good fan base there, but there's quite a few former you get former OHL players, you get former NCAA, you get quite a few really good junior C players, quite a few junior B, and you get a good smattering of former NHLers in there too.
Yeah, the league, since I first came home, 10, 11 years ago, the difference between what the league's like now to when I first started is it's not even close. The skill level, has gone way up.
Gone way up, yes. Yeah. I know in the last few years in the local league there, some names to throw out would be like Theo Peckham, formerly of the Edmonton Oilers, and Chris Menard, a Stanley Cup winner who is back in the Owen Sound area. So, yeah, it's worthwhile. You can head into your local rinks and catch some really solid hockey. Now, before you played senior with the fabled Durham Thundercats, you had a fairly lengthy pro career, and your last stop was with Manchester in England. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I was trying to remember if it was Phoenix or Manchester was your last stop. Yeah. But so what was it like playing at the top level in Britain?
It was good. It was different though. Just the travel and the lifestyle compared even, to the American League. I was used to it. Over in England, the biggest thing basically played about 10 players only. So you're on the ice all the time, and then at the end of every game, someone would win a case of beer, and you'd sit in the room and drink it. And I thought, I can do this back home.
Yeah. So the money wasn't necessarily making it worthwhile to be there. Is that fair to say?
No, like it was good, but it got to the point where I thought, time to come home, explore some opportunities here, and if I can find something, then that's it. I don't need to keep traveling and moving all over. So it was kind of nice to get settled down after that.
Start to set down the roots.
Yeah, because you did play for a few different teams overseas. Started out in Vienna, was it?
Vienna, yeah.
And I guess at a certain point, and I've got to ask you about this because I was reading a few articles that talked about you and that, and you and a guy, Scott Fankhauser, ended up playing for the same team, and then you ended up moving on at the same time together a couple more times. So what was your relationship with Scott like?
It was great, but he was a guy that I just met when I got there. I didn't know who he was before. His wife and my wife got along really well, so it was just kind of one of those relationships that clicked off the ice too. And then halfway through that year, I came back and ended up in Phoenix. And then that summer when I was signing in Manchester, he called and saying he was thinking of doing the same thing. I was like, perfect, like so nice to go, at least when you're going to a different country, to know somebody and be able to settle in with them. So.
Yeah, because I think you guys ended up on about 3 different teams together at the same time.
Almost on one more too, in Bloomington, but I didn't go that year. That was the year I decided not to play. So.
Yeah, I believe you had signed with them, but then changed your mind after the fact.
Yeah, I told the coach at that point I'd sign, but if something else came up, I wasn't going to come. I just didn't want to catch him off guard like 2 weeks before the season and saying, sorry, I'm not coming now. So.
Give him a lot of notice. Now, Hockey Talk's been around. This is our 4th season, and you actually were a guest on our 1st season. So I remember talking about when you were in Austria, and I asked about kind of acclimatizing to the culture and the language.
I know exactly where you're going with this story.
How did you enjoy acclimatizing to a German-speaking country?
It took a little bit. The story you're talking about, early in the year, we had a function. I knew after the function I was going to invite a couple of Austrian guys that were living in my apartment building back for a couple of beers. So I went to the store and just bought whatever beer. I didn't know what kind was what. And guys come back, we have a couple of beers, and I think it was about halfway through the second one, the one guy starts smiling. I'm like, what are you guys laughing at? And he said, just so you know, you bought non-alcoholic beer. I said, okay, good to know. Didn't buy that beer again.
Good thing you did that in Austria, because if you ever pulled that in Durham, Ontario,
that wouldn't fly.
Yeah, that wouldn't fly too well at all.
Yeah, that wouldn't go over so well at all with those guys. I mean, at some point, I used to drive tour buses before I got into doing what I'm doing now, and I took out the Thundercats a couple of times, and the Palmerston. I think Palmerston was called the 81s then, and now they're the Minto.
Yep.
And I've been out with guys in the senior leagues, and they're a wild bunch. Some of them. Yeah. You get a team out of 20 guys. It's probably good 15 or 16 of them are pretty wild guys, and they can really get things going out there.
That's the nice thing with playing in Durham. We bus pretty well everywhere. Yeah. And it's just a great chance for the guys to get to know each other, because you got nowhere to go. It's not like you're at even a house party or something like that where people are here or there. So you're on the bus, and great way to get to know the guys.
And harkening back to before the Durham Thundercats, there was the Durham Huskies was a senior team for a long time in Durham, and they always had a very solid program. They had a lot of former pros, former NHLers. I was thinking, I believe Dean Hopkins had played there, and Jim Roberts, and there's probably some others I'm forgetting, but they
had a really good team. I know, it was kind of early to mid 80s when they were kind of in their prime, which I was pretty young, but I still remember going to the games as a kid, and to think back, there was a lot of local guys, like as good as they were and as far as they went, it was with, basically Durham guys. And, you hear them talk about the good times that they had. It was kind of the same thing, riding the buses together and getting to know each other that way. So,
kind of a legacy that way, right? Where it builds that success. Where, as you say, the multi-generational, where it gives the kids something to sort of say, hey, that's something we could do.
Yeah.
Even if we leave to play junior or play pro or whatever, if the job opportunity comes up, then we have a high level of hockey we can also play there too.
Yeah.
And going back to your North American pro career, I mean, you were one of the guys that did something that not a lot of guys, especially in today's hockey world, can do. I mean, you were drafted in the 7th round by Dallas, and I was looking at that draft class, and there's a lot of guys, even in the 2nd round, all the way down to 7th, that never ever got to see an NHL game at all.
Mm-hmm.
And in today's world, by the time you get down to the 7th round, there's very few and far between guys that ever get to see an NHL game at all. So, I mean, you had a pretty lengthy career. I mean, you played a lot of different AHL and a few games for Dallas in what was it, 02, 03?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And
03, 04.
There was a guy picked 5 picks ahead of you in that draft, who had a pretty decent career himself. His name was Henrik Zetterberg.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And I mean, I was looking at that, and I'm thinking, wow, 7th rounder to do something like that. You got to play, and I was looking at the rounds going up from there, and there were very, very few names that even rang a bell with me. And we do a lot of studying on hockey, and so that's pretty cool. That you
it's
actually
kind of a neat way to
far.
sometimes to go back and look at the draft. Is later on in the draft, just reading names of guys that overcame it or made it, and then you hear of Martin, St. Louis, and guys like that never even got drafted.
Right.
So, I mean, the opportunities are there. You got to hope for the right one.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You must have had the great perseverance to keep going and make it above these guys that were supposedly drafted higher than you. That technically should have had a better shot, but some guys that push a little harder to get to the game, and others don't, right?
Lots of times at certain levels, once it gets to a point, the difference between this guy and this guy isn't necessarily all that much. It's just the right opportunity, the right timing. Maybe there was someone else that they were thinking about calling up. Maybe he was hurt, and that's why I got my chance. Who knows? You just keep playing and hope for your opportunity.
Now, talking about the draft going in, what were your thoughts going in towards being drafted? What did you think the probability was? And how did it feel when you actually, I guess back then we didn't have the internet going as much, so you probably got a call, right?
Yeah, so I was actually, earlier that summer, I'd got a call from Dallas to go meet. They had, I guess, people that they thought they were interested, you would go meet with a psychiatrist. So I went and met with him, and it was like a 3-hour-long interview or whatever it was.
It's pretty intense.
It was in Toronto. Yeah, it was. So after that, I kind of had a feeling. I knew that they were obviously interested. That was the only team that had reached out to me or whatever. The year before, I got invited to their camp as a walk-on, and got there, and they found out that I had torn cartilage in my knee, so I never even stepped on the ice. I was there for 48 hours and flew back home and had surgery. So I had an idea that they were interested, but once again, you don't really know. I was away at a family thing and came back to town and went to my brother's house because he had the internet. My family still at that point didn't even have it, and just was scrolling through, reading all the names, trying to see some of my teammates that had got drafted when I saw my name. And once I went home, there was a message on the answer machine, but it was pretty exciting.
That would be really cool. Now, as Paul was saying there too, then being drafted in the 7th round, perseverance. How much of a push did you have to make? How much did it change your life after being drafted, as far as focusing yourself on that pro career?
A little bit, but even once I was playing in Oshawa, you still had the choices were there to make different ones. Whether it was your friends that you come home in the summer and there's a party going on Friday, Saturday, whatever it might be. One night you might have some fun. The next night you're the driver. You made those sacrifices, and then same thing once I made it to, I guess, Kalamazoo my first year, and then just that first year of professional hockey, playing with guys that were in their 30s, guys that had played hundreds of games in the NHL, and you just learn so much from these guys about lifestyle and how they eat and how they take care of themselves and the work they put in away from the rink at the gym, and just you kind of get a, you know, I don't know what the right word is, but come home in the summer and it's like, you know, I want to strive to be as good as a professional athlete as, you know, Mark Watton or Matt Martin, guys that I played with that you guys would know, maybe not know their names, but they were guys that were very important to me.
And some other, like, when you were in the Dallas organization, who are some of the other guys along the way that were really good benchmarks for you to sort of model yourself after?
So me and John Erskine and this Dan Jansewski we were three guys that all were fairly big defensemen. John was super crazy tough, so that was not my game. But all three of us kind of played the same style as far as, you know, glassing out, just make a pass. We weren't power play guys, we weren't offensive minded, so it was, you know, just really trying to work on our defensive game. And I had Craig Ludwig as a coach, and he was just perfect for me because that's how he made his living in the NHL, was just by playing defense. So just his little tips, and, you know, it was nice to play hockey and not worry about if you didn't get an assist for 7-8 games. It didn't matter. You were there to play defense, play against the other team's top line, and, you know, it still made you feel good about yourself, and you're on the right, you know, program and the right process to hopefully get to that next level.
So you played with in the Dallas organization. You were with the Utah Grizzlies for several years.
Yeah.
What was it like playing out in Utah?
I loved it. It was right before the Olympics, so I think my second year was when the Olympics were there. So we had a brand new rink. The city was, things were going up everywhere to get ready for the Olympics in the mountains, which was, you know, something I'd never seen before, and just really clean city. I was there for 4 years. When you spend that much time there, it starts to feel like home a little bit. You make some connections with some people away from the rink, and I really enjoyed it there.
Yeah, and so you guys probably were scheduled for an extended road trip during the Olympics?
It was, I don't remember the exact numbers now, but I think we were gone for 16, 20 days, and then the All-Star break came in there, so we had like 4 days off. And I rented out my apartment to some guys from Ottawa, actually, so I couldn't even go back there. So me and some teammates, we went to Vegas. It was like 6-hour drive. Came back, got in the plane again, and then I think we were gone for another 12 or 13. Came home for like a week, and then they have the Paralympics right after, so we were gone again for an extended. I know at one point we had like a week off, so that we went to Dallas actually for the week, just to be settled, because other than that, you were just bouncing around from here and there.
Bouncing around. Now, they often talk about, when you're in the American Hockey League, the long bus rides. Being in Utah, geographically, did you guys end up flying a bit more than?
We flew everywhere. Like our closest team was probably about a 2-hour flight to Houston or something like that. So generally what would happen is we would fly into Chicago, we might play Chicago, and then bus to Milwaukee, and then bus to Grand Rapids, and then bus back to Chicago, and then fly back to Utah. So you would bus around when you were there, but yeah, we flew pretty well everywhere.
So in your time with Utah, you would have played quite a few preseason games with Dallas.
Yeah.
Over the years.
Yeah. So my first year in Kalamazoo, I basically played, you know, every other game. So I think I played about 50 games out of 80. So I was kind of an up and down. And then in March, my brother actually came down, and his wife to come watch me play for a week. And the day he got there, I got sent to Fort Wayne to the United League. So I said, enjoy the apartment, I'll see ya. I got to go to Fort Wayne. So I actually took a step back, went to the United League for a couple weeks, got called back up for the last 2 weeks of then the IHL. Played there, and then went back to the United League for their playoffs. So going into camp the next year, I was, you know, way down on the depth chart, and just had a camp that I guess was really good. I didn't really, you know, wasn't scoring goals or doing anything flashy, but I guess just moving the puck and glassing out. And Ken Hitchcock was the coach at the time, and liked what he'd saw out of me, I guess, at the start. So the very first exhibition game was in Colorado, and I got to play in it. And the game went well, and that whole training camp just seemed to be, things just went really well. It was good for my confidence. I think I played 6 of the 8 exhibition games. The last one I remember was on a Saturday night. There was me and another defenseman. His name was Sammy Helenas. He was there, and a forward, and they had to make 2 cuts left. So it was down to the end. I was pretty sure I knew I was going back, but after the game, the GM came up to me and said, you got a flight tomorrow from Dallas back to Utah. And I said, well, all the rest of the guys got told to go to Utah before training camp and then fly in. Well, because I was so far down the depth chart, I didn't even get told that because they didn't know if I was probably going to be in Utah. So fly back home, get my car, and then drive to Utah. So it was a great training camp, and it was just kind of good for my confidence. And at that point, I thought, I got a chance at this sort of thing.
And then some years, when Utah was out of the playoffs, you'd get press box basically call-ups by Dallas when they were in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like?
It was, so I think I did it 3 times, and they call you your black aces. So there'd be 4 or 5 years get called up, a couple of defensemen, a couple of forwards, for sure a goalie. The first time I remember just being like, it was a lot of fun. Like practice, and then after practice we just have like big 3-on-3 tournaments. It was workout after, but go to the games. You got to watch all the games. Sit and see the fans. It was just really cool to be around. And then I remember one of the years, I think it was the last year I went. We didn't practice with the team unless someone was hurt. So there was a few times where you just sat on the bench with all your gear on until practice was done. Then you get called on the ice, and then you just skate for half an hour. And that time wasn't quite so much fun, the ice part of it, but it was still a great experience just being around the guys and seeing what they go through, especially in the playoffs. Like, I remember coming down after one of the games they were playing Edmonton, and just seeing the media that was in the hallway was ridiculous. And this was the first round. Now, mind you, it was Edmonton, so it was a Canadian-based team, but it was quite eye-opening.
And then I guess we're working backwards chronologically now. So going back to your Oshawa Generals day, where after that draft, where you started playing for the Generals, at that point did you think you had a pro career in you, or at that point were you still just out there having fun and not really thinking that far
just
ahead?
Out there having fun. So really going back to when I was playing with Hanover, they had like central scouting ratings or something came out, I can't say, around December, November, and I found it then that I was rated in, I can't even remember, say the 10th round or something, and I thought, rated in the OHL draft like that? My goal at that point was to maybe play Junior B. So the rest of that year was exciting. I was hoping to get drafted to the OHL, and went to the OHL draft. I think I was rated in the 8th or 9th round and didn't get drafted to the 13th round. And I remember sitting with my brother and my mom and dad, and I was like, after the 13th round, I was like, if I don't get drafted this round, I just want to go home. Like, this is, sitting in the stands and waiting. And then, when I went to Oshawa, there was a defenseman that got drafted in the 7th round that I played summer hockey with, and I was like, I'm as good as this guy or close to, so I thought I have a chance. And then, just same thing, kind of had a good camp, got the opportunity to stay there and play. But as far as the next level at that point, same thing. I was just happy kind of being there. I was in there, the lineup. I think I'd play one game, sit a game, play a game, So it was just, I was hoping to just be a regular at one point there for sure.
And back then, did you have a coach or any of the coaches at that level that more influenced your way of play and how you played the game that you felt was confidence builder?
Bill Stewart was my coach, who was phenomenal. Like, he just that was the first time I'd ever really learned systems, or up until that point, you knew some systems, but not as detailed as this. So having him as a coach, I remember it was an exhibition game and it was early. I think we just scored a goal. The puck came back to me to the point, and I just kind of rushed in, which I don't obviously do very often, and made a play out front. We didn't score. Came off the ice, didn't think anything of it, and he came down and yelled at me for rushing the puck in after we just scored a goal and basically throwing a hope pass out to the front of the net. He's like, that's not you. You stay at the back. You're not an offensive guy in this league. And I thought, okay, it's time to just concentrate on defense. So.
And we were talking a bit before the show that it was a different time and age in hockey. It was a little bit rougher. One of those names you mentioned earlier, John Erskine. When I was preparing for this show, I came across a video clip where, it was from 1999, apparently January 15th, 1999, and everyone hates the London Knights, and apparently it's a little bit grainy there, but this was a brawl between Oshawa and the London Knights. You see the referees at one point, you get a couple up on the dasher. So you were with, I believe you were in the Oshawa box over here.
Yeah. I was not really wanting to get in that mix too much, I don't think. I just remember Erskine at the top there. As I said, the guys were climbing through the stands and just coming straight down at you. But it was definitely a different time.
It's the one and only time people would really want Mike Milbury around.
Yeah. And like I was saying to you then, I know the year before that we actually had a line brawl with them then too, and we only played them twice a year, so it's not even like there was no reason for this. I don't even know
to build
how
the heat
or
up,
why or what, but
and if I'm not mistaken, one of your teammates had the name, his actual name, not a nickname, but his name was Drew Bucktooth.
Yeah.
He was in the box with you there too. Yeah,
it would be interesting to be able to go back just prior to this scene and see what started it off.
And I can't even remember, so I think there wasn't a line brawl, but something had happened where we'd all kind of paired off, and they probably just gave everybody 10s because there can't be, that's why we're all in the penalty box. And I think two guys just started talking to each other and decided, well, let's just go right here over top of the timekeeper.
And see, I think later on in the clip they, I don't know if we'll get the full 3 minutes in or not, but you see they kind of back it up and you see some beaking back and forth, and then they start reaching more and more, and then it all breaks out. So definitely a little more of the rough stuff back in those days. Now this one's not necessarily with your OHL, but I wanted to ask you about another couple of guys you played with along the way. In Utah, one of the years you played there in the AHL, the leading scorer on your team was a guy called Jared Scaldi, who recently was head coach of Guelph Storm.
Yeah.
But I've heard that he's kind of a unique cat. And what really jumped out at me was I noticed in the OHL draft just a couple weeks ago, the priority selection for the OHL, his son got drafted.
Drafted to Oshawa.
Yeah. Oshawa, and his first name is Skate.
Yeah.
Skate Scaldi.
Yeah.
So I was like, this isn't doing anything to dispel my conception of him as a unique character.
He was a unique guy. He was a great guy. He was one of the best teammates I ever had. A lot of fun. Great personality. They had a daughter as well. The daughter's name is True.
True.
Yeah, so just, a little bit different names or whatever, but it suited their personalities right to a T, and yeah.
And when you were in Hartford back in 04-05, so after you were in the Dallas organization, you ended up signing in the Rangers organization, and their top farm team was Hartford Wolfpack. So one of your teammates then was Dominic Moore, who's still playing.
Yeah. So
would you have pegged him out of all your teammates to have such a long, enduring career?
Probably not. There was a lot of good players in that team. That was the year of the lockout, the first one, and it was by far the best hockey I had ever played. There were the guys that were in the league that year. Each team probably had at least 2 or 3, if not 5 or 6 guys that had the NHL been going, they'd be playing in the NHL. I know we lost to Carolina's farm team in the playoffs that year, and it was Ward was their goalie, Stahl was on that team, Mike Commodore.
Wow.
And then the next year, pretty sure is when Carolina won the Stanley Cup. So, yeah, it was. Our team had some good players, like I said. A lot of other teams. Dom was a really smart player, a really smart individual too. I think he's a Harvard graduate. But he took care of himself really well off the ice, and that part doesn't surprise me of how good a shape he kept himself in. But he wasn't our top scorer or anything like that, but he was a really smart, good, honest, hard-working player. So
I think, it wasn't that long ago he was with Toronto and then Boston 2 seasons ago, and then this year played in Switzerland.
Yeah.
But still holding out hopes of getting yet another one-year contract in the NHL. So good on him for that. You were talking about the lockout and some players that NHL caliber. I know it's all speculation and such, but I know at that time the Rangers had gone through a period of a lot of very expensive older free agents, and they had run themselves into some money issues with that. And they also badly needed some really good defensemen. So it was my opinion, if there hadn't been a lockout year, I think you definitely would have logged some NHL minutes that year for sure.
Well, you hope that was the opportunity. You never know. But yeah, I think the lockout though was part of the chance for a lot of young guys the year after to get the opportunity, because the salary cap came in. So now there was guys that were making too much money, so they had the opportunity to buy them out or whatever they decided. I can't remember how they got rid of some of their contracts, but it gave a lot of young guys the opportunity the next year to get some games in, and I think that's when the kind of the turnover started a little bit. It took some years before the league got as young as it is now, but that was kind of the first step as far as out with the old, in with the new.
I'm trying to remember, did they allow extra buyouts after that lockout? I can't remember.
I know after the second one they for sure did. I'm assuming after the first one they had to have
something like that.
Had to have something set up, because a team like the Rangers' salary cap might have been at $70 million at that point, and they were only allowed 40. So you got to give them the opportunity to get down or something.
To balance it out.
Yeah.
So previous to your time with the Oshawa Generals in the OHL, before your long and impressive pro career, and actually, the one thing we didn't touch on, we should back up to that, is when you got your call up to the Dallas Stars. So we're not talking press box call up, we're not talking preseason, but when you actually got called up to the show, tell us what that experience was like.
It was pretty surreal feeling, really. I remember we practiced that morning, and I got called into the coach's office, and he had told me that I was getting called up, and I remember just thinking, my flight was in 4 hours or something, race home, pack your bags, and away you go. And I actually got called up, we practiced, and then they were heading out on a road trip. So we went to LA, San Jose, Phoenix, and then back for a couple of games against Chicago. But yeah, I remember even the first practice just being really nervous, feeling like, am I really here right now? But actually the first couple games I didn't play. I sat in the press box, and then there was a game Saturday night in San Jose. Sunday morning went down for team breakfast. I was told I was playing that night, and I played 4 games. So
that's pretty good, and that's how it is. I've guys that have never made it that far wonder, when you get that call up, how incredibly time sensitive things are, because it's not like, oh, okay, I got called up, I'll go out there eventually, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty well, you get ready and you go immediately, right?
Yeah, and it's exactly like that. And I remember calling home and telling my parents and some friends, I just got called up, and just because you get called up doesn't mean you're getting to be able to play. So the first couple of games, like you said, not even playing, then you start to think, oh, I hope this isn't as far as it gets.
Yeah.
To be so close,
to be so close and not actually be able to say that you actually played a game. But very grateful and thankful that I even got the opportunity to play one, so I'll take 4.
And did your parents get to come out and see you play at all?
No,
that's too bad.
They watched it on TV, so that was as close as I got.
Yeah. Dad is Angus, Mom is
Karen.
Karen.
Yeah.
How much did Angus coach you when you were young?
Quite a bit. He would. I had 2 older brothers, so I think he would coach. Steve 1 year, Keith 1 year, me 1 year, and kind of down the line. But I had him a few different times. I know when I was younger, and then probably about Adam on, he stepped back. There were some other dads and guys in the community that wanted to coach, so he just was happy, kind of watching from the stands. He had coached Keith and Steve a lot, so it was probably nice for him to just be able to sit back in the stands and just watch. So.
Yeah, and you had some good minor hockey teams when you were in Durham?
Yeah, we had some really good teams. We made it to 3 All-Ontario finals, lost 2 of them, and then finally won 1 in Bantam. So.
Yeah, and name some of the guys that would have been on that team.
Well, Chad Willard, who is another guy that went on to play professional hockey. Played, so we were the same age. The year I got drafted to Oshawa, he got drafted to Sault Ste. Marie in, I think, the 2nd round, and played in the Sioux for a year and a half, and then played with the Owen Sound, then Platers, and then went to St. Mike's. But he had some really big junior numbers, great goal scorer, great shot.
He had a long pro career too. After that.
He. He played longer than I did, so he'd be probably 10, 12 years, something like that he played. He lives in Fort Worth, where he met his wife, and he was the best player on our team for sure, always growing up. So Mike Nixon be another guy. He got drafted to, I want to say, Mississauga. We just, to have 3 guys on a...
He was a goalie?
He was a forward.
Forward, okay, so.
Jim McGilvery was, he was an underage kid that came up. Another guy drafted, played in Erie.
Played for the Erie Otters.
Yeah, so to have 4 guys on a minor hockey team of a town with 2,500 people to get drafted to the OHL doesn't happen very often, so it probably explains why, we had so many good runs at that age group growing up.
That was before the real rise of AAA. Everything's through AAA now, and because even up until 6-7 years ago, it wasn't uncommon for junior C players to get drafted into the OHL, and it's pretty rare now.
Mm-hmm.
Like Brock Baer was one of the last ones I can recall.
AAA I think started the year I went to Hanover. It was they were trying to get that program started. They wanted a few of us to stay, but growing up, both my brothers played with the Barons, and that was kind of. That was a goal of mine. I wanted to be a Hanover Baron. I wanted to play there just like my brothers did. So it was, kind of a no-brainer. That was where I was hoping to play.
Yeah, kind of that legacy thing again. Some of the Barons gear here to rep it out there. So yeah, back in the day where a lot of the players drafted were coming out of junior C and or minor hockey programs.
Even from that year, I think there was 3 or 4 of us from that Barons team that got drafted that year. There was me and Chad and Neil Simpson.
Yeah, and actually there's Neil beside you in the picture there. Yeah.
And then our goalie, Stephen Tilker, I think got drafted to London, and Mike Nixon started that year with us, and then he ended up going back to minor hockey in around December or something like that. So.
Now this particular picture here was this past year. And what was it called? The Barons, was it Wall of
Fame that they've started in their dressing room. So
just this past year, yeah. I actually ended up being the photographer for that picture because my son Kieran was flag bearer.
Oh yeah.
And so I was doing the proud papa, snapping some shots, and then someone along the bench said, "Oh, we don't have a photographer for this.
You're
we get out there." So, and then the problem was I had like the huge zoom.
Yeah.
So I had to pretty much get like snug against the backboards on the other side of the rink just to get that because I had the super zoom going. So, but there you go. So yeah, Jason Howes.
Yeah.
Who's beside you here?
I don't remember.
Not from your timeline.
No.
Okay.
And then Neil Simpson, and then Kevin Lang.
Kevin Lang. Yeah. And Neil also was drafted by Sault Ste. Marie.
Yeah.
And then.
So I remember at that point thinking, how lucky it was for Chad and Neil. Like I'd said earlier, they're going to a camp. At least they know somebody, because that's it was difficult at that point where you're going to a new team or a team where you don't know anybody.
Now, when you went to your first camp with Oshawa, did you have an agent?
No.
You didn't?
No.
So it's kind of trickier trying to navigate your way through
Yeah,
what's
so
going on.
I remember the first day, had to be there at whatever, say 8 o'clock in the morning. My parents had me there and go through the day, practice, scrimmage. I remember going into, their lounge there was called the Bobby Orr Lounge, and sitting in a big room, all the guys are there, and they just call billets up to the front, and then if they called your name, you went out with them, and that's how you met your billet family. I had a roommate, and hop in the car with them and go to your new home, just like that.
So I have one more question for you before we wrap up. And when you were on our show previously, we asked you who was probably the most skilled player you ever played with as far as teammate along the way, whether NHL, AHL. And I remember who you said, so
You're going to test me and see if I said
got to test you, see if it comes up there, yeah.
Mark Savard?
That's exactly who you said there, yeah.
He, like I said, going back to that year in Oshawa, I played junior C, which was great, but going to Oshawa, Savvy had led the league in scoring as a 17-year-old, was leading it as an 18-year-old, and then broke his leg. And then the year he was 19, the year I played with him, he won it that year too. So he was just phenomenal. The things he did on the ice, his vision. I just remember like one of the first skates of the year, just at one of the scrimmages, a pass he made to me, and I thought, how did that just happen? How did that get all the way over here? But he was a tremendous, smart player, and obviously went on to have a good, long NHL career.
One of the reasons that stuck with me was because around the time we interviewed you, we had Nathan Parrott on, and when we asked him the same question,
same answer.
He had the same answer, and then I think somewhere else along the way, like in season 2 or season 3, someone else came up with Mark Savard as one of the most skilled players they ever been.
He was really, really phenomenal, and loved the game. Like not quirky, but he would sit with his hockey stick and just like almost pet it like his dog. He just, if he had a big game the next day, like he would sometimes like take his hockey stick home. Just really out of the box, things where I would never think to do something like that. But that's just how serious he took it, and how much pressure he put on himself and superstitions to do whatever it took.
Fun.
And one last question now before we let you walk away. Now that all the Stanley Cup favorites, I guess, have been beaten in the first round this year, which has been out of the world, who's your pick to win the Cup now?
Well, I'd like to see Dallas, just because they, kind of soft spot for them. And actually their head coach is an old teammate of mine that I had for a couple years, Jim Montgomery. So on a personal level, I think Colorado, would be nice. Nathan McKinnon, just, the way he's been playing is, I don't really watch them play obviously all that much, but I've seen him a few games this year, and I just, I didn't realize just how good he was. So, and I got a couple of those guys in my hockey pool, so I wouldn't mind seeing them go on a little bit of a run.
Oh, and you're a former Trojan yourself, right?
Yep.
So there you go. You might see him around this week. We have a big reunion going on around Hanover here. Yeah. The closing JDSS reunion. So you taking in any of the events?
Yeah, I'm going over Saturday afternoon for the walkthrough or whatever you call it. That. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Well, thanks for being here and sharing some of your insights and going over some of your great experiences. And what we're going to do here is take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Steve Fitzsimmons to talk some OHL and NHL. See you in a few seconds. Welcome back to Hockey Talk, ladies and gentlemen. We just had a great chat with former NHL, OHL defenseman Jeff MacMillan. And next up, we have from the Clark guys doing something a little different. Instead of a newspaper article, have something from an old program from 1972-73. First of all, we have some mugs of a scurvy bunch of bandits from the old Hanover Barons. And that'll be up on your screen in a moment. And we also have their schedule there. And there's the mugs. Some familiar faces. I know there's a lot of people in town for that reunion in Hanover this week, so I thought we'd get that up there. And the other shot to go along with that is their schedule, which the interesting piece about the Barons' schedule in 72-73 is back then they didn't delineate between Junior C, Junior B. So the teams they were playing against included Kitchener, New Hamburg, St. Thomas, Caledonia. So some of those are now Junior B centers. And they Barons certainly had to cover a lot of ground there in their junior loop. At any rate, you can catch this at your own leisure on our Twitter feed at HockeyTalk913. And moving on, we have a familiar face back with us, Steve Fitzsimmons. You've been quite busy with the Guelph Storm recently.
Yeah, they've been a little bit busy, I guess, getting themselves to the OHL final, clinching that in Game 7 for the second consecutive series. So, yeah, they'll take on the Ottawa 67s. It's been exciting. And, guys, I have an interesting interview. I had a chance to speak with Dale Talon, the general manager of the Florida Panthers. And we had a great chat. And this chat is courtesy of Rogers TV.
Welcome back to the Sleeman Center in the second intermission. We're delighted to be joined by the President of Hockey Operations and General Manager of the Florida Panthers, Dale Talon. And Dale, certainly some big news in Florida land this week. You landed perhaps the most preeminent coach in the National Hockey League, Joel Quenneville, a guy you know well. What does that mean for your franchise?
Well, it makes us relative in the marketplace. It eliminates any perception that we don't want to win and don't want to spend the money. It creates an atmosphere of more certainty for our franchise. And as I said, he's not only a great coach, but a great person, and he'd be a great motivator for our young players.
And you were telling me it made a huge impact right at the box office in the first day.
Yeah, the first couple of days, our business and ticket sales have just really exploded, and something that's never happened in the franchise history before in the last couple of days. So all good for us. We're disappointed we didn't make the playoffs. We thought after last year's run that we'd have a good finish this year, but it just wasn't to be, and we made some changes, and now bringing Joel in will really give our players motivation to have a good summer and come back and play with a lot more energy.
Well, when you look at the nucleus of this club, I mean, Alexander Barkov, what a year. He had 96 points, 35 goals. Jonathan Huberdeau, equally 92 points, 30 goals. And, of course, Mike Hoffman, a great addition as well, 36 goals and 70 points. You got a lot to build with there. Maybe just a quick sort of retool and go right back to the playoffs.
Yeah, we're not far off. I think we have to be better in goal. We have to actually be better 5-on-5 and in our own end. We have a young defense corps. We have a lot of good prospects coming. We're excited about our future. It's just I think Joel will be a big plus for our young D. They'll get more confidence, and I think we'll have a lot of room to spend on free agents starting July 1st. So we'll add some good pieces that won't interfere with our development of our young guys, and I think our team will start to blossom, and we have a bright future.
Speaking of your development pipeline in the Ontario Hockey League, you got a couple of great young players. Owen Tippett, he's been nothing short of dynamic for Mississauga, and of course Saginaw now in his second in OHL scoring in the playoffs. Do you see him as a player that can play for you next year?
Well, we're excited. He's had a couple of training camps now, and he's gotten better and better, and now his 200-foot game is very solid. He was an offensive weapon before. Now I think he's more of a complete player, and he's showing that in the playoffs and ever since he's gone to Saginaw. And we like Sarah Knoll's size and his physicality down low. He's very strong, and he's just going to be a real strong power forward for us down the road. So we're excited about what we have coming in the pipeline as well.
So this NHL draft, you're here obviously doing some scouting work,
yes.
And you mentioned that you wanted to see kind of the top 50 players yourself personally.
Right.
How do you categorize this draft in terms of depth compared to maybe some other ones?
Well, I think it's as solid as any draft I've been involved in. I don't think they have the superstars. Obviously Jack Hughes and Haka in Finland, but after that, the top 50 are pretty good. And I think it's a deep draft all the way through. We have 9 picks, so I'm excited about our opportunities here moving forward. And that's when you make your team. You're having good, 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks that make your team. That's a real bonus.
Absolutely. You mentioned that you're heading to Europe to scout the
under 18s next week.
18s, yep.
Yeah, this is a busy time of the year for us, and this is my favorite part of the job, going to these rinks and watching the communities get involved and seeing the enthusiasm and passion of the people and the players. I think it's great to see.
It is exciting. Well, we wish you all the best with moving forward with your franchise, and I'm sure the huge additions coming as well. But the biggest one, of course, as your coach, is going to make a large addition to your club.
I think so. We're excited. I think the Florida Panthers are going to be relevant for sure.
Dale Talon, the general manager of the Florida Panthers, joining us here in the second intermission. We'll take a break and be back with more right after this.
Yeah, great guy. We had a great chat in the media room prior to the game, and it just kind of evolved into asking him to be a guest on the intermission, and he basically said, we basically have like 2 reporters that cover the Florida Panthers, so he doesn't do a ton of media, even though he's very media savvy. He's always been, certainly was with the Chicago Blackhawks. Great guy, had some super stories that I won't share on air as well, but he was, he certainly, I think that's a great move, getting Joel Quenneville. You could argue he's the best coach in the league.
And there's a lot of really interesting things. One thing that jumped out at me was when he said that we're going to bring in some people that aren't going to interfere with the development of our young players.
Right.
And that's interesting. Like, for instance, we had Justin Pogge on a few weeks ago that coming out of junior, he had won all the same awards that Carey Price did, but obviously, didn't get into the same situation that Carey Price did. But when he did end up with the Leafs, that was a year where they had Gerber, they had Toskala, and then, for marketing, they brought back Curtis Joseph for a last hurrah, and he ended up playing 21 games before he retired. But that was kind of a case where you were bringing in people without thought to, is it impeding the development? And right there, he's being very cognizant of it.
Yeah, and I also get the sense that, and I mean, it's very obvious they're going to be extremely aggressive in free agency, whether they go after the duo from the Columbus Blue Jackets in Panarin and Bobrovsky. I would think that's target 1, target 2. Certainly his history with Panarin, actually having brought him into Chicago in the first place, and have him playing for Joel Quenneville as a coach, I think probably bodes, with them having a reasonable shot at getting Panarin if they're going to step up with the dollars.
Panarin's such a highly skilled player.
He is.
I believe you have a clip of a highly skilled player on the rise.
Yeah, so this has gone a little bit viral in the last couple of days. Nick Suzuki, he leads the OHL playoffs in scoring with 31 points. The next nearest, Owen Tippett, 22 points. That's just how dominant Nick Suzuki has been. But he scored this unbelievable goal in a game, and it's been all over Sportsnet, TSN, everywhere. Hundreds of thousands of views to it. So we're going to let you see my call on this particular goal by Nick Suzuki.
And whistle now for Suzuki. Suzuki with great speed. Nice move, and they're bringing it. Scored! What a goal! Top shot! Nick Suzuki. Unbelievable play. Wow, with a capital W on that play by Nick Suzuki.
Just when you think that he's pushed off the puck and he's lost control, Nick Suzuki pulls a rabbit out of his hat. Watch this. The old spinorama right there. Backhander, top shelf over the mitt of Lennox, and it's 3-0. And for Nick Suzuki, looking at his postseason play, his 12th goal and 30th point of the postseason.
And even the goalie, you could see it on his face, even through the mask, that he couldn't believe what Nick Suzuki just did to him.
Should mention, of course, that's courtesy of Rogers TV as well. But the interesting thing as well is Marc Bergevin, the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, was in the building. Nick Suzuki wasn't aware of that until after the game. But Marc Bergevin was smiling after that, I'm quite sure.
Yeah, classy young man there. I'm so happy for him. Former guest on Hockey Talk.
Yep.
But there is kind of like the tear rolling down here as, Grey County guy, Owen Sound Attack being the hometown team. Good on him in Guelph, but we sure missed seeing that up in Owen Sound.
You bring up an interesting point because there's been a ton of interest by folks in Grey County, Owen Sound Attack fans that have become bandwagon fans of the Guelph Storm in this run, of course, with 4 members of the Owen Sound Attack previously as members of the Guelph Storm now, and there's all kinds of Owen Sound Attack jerseys in the audience every night. I bet you that's 100 people.
And it's been pretty exciting too. I mean, Guelph got down 3-0 against London and came all the way back and won that series in 7. They just recently were down 3-1 to Saginaw, came all the way back in dramatic fashion winning Game 7, was it yesterday?
3-2, yeah, yesterday, yeah.
And now they're moving on to the OHL Championship to take on an Ottawa 67s team who hasn't lost a game yet.
You know what? It's kind of a meeting of two teams that have done unprecedented things. So you look at the Ottawa 67s. They're the first team to be 12-0, or actually to sweep their first 3 series. They have a chance to set the record if they should lose 1 game or less for the best team in the history of the OHL playoffs. Guelph, conversely, is the first team in OHL history to be down 2-0 in 2 different series and come back to win. They were the 5th team in OHL history to come back from a 3-0 deficit to win any kind of series. So history meets history. It's going to be an interesting one for sure.
And well, and I won't pose this question on Steve because he does the play-by-play for the Guelph Storm. But Andy, do the Guelph Storm have any chance to take out the Ottawa 67s?
Well, they definitely have a chance. And if nothing else, we've learned you can't write them off very easily. I have to be honest, I haven't really sat down and got my brain wrapped around this one yet. So I don't have my pick in yet. I'll throw it out there via Twitter because I don't want to try and skirt the issue on this one. But, Ottawa, I knew was going to walk away with their side of things. I was hoping for Guelph. I wasn't 100% sure, to be honest, right? Because the London Knights and Saginaw were so formidable. So this is going to be an interesting mix. The one difference I would say between them that jumps out at me, first of all, I think huge depth at forwards for both teams. Solid defense that can play both ways, move the puck. I would have to give the nod definitely to Ottawa in the net, though.
Well, I mean, Michael DiPietro was the World Junior goalie for Team Canada versus Popovich, who, in fairness to him, was a sub-900 save percentage on the year. He's played extremely well in the playoffs and has lifted his game to a new level. But this is, playing the best junior goalie in the world, perhaps. It's going to be a formidable matchup for Popovich to match up with DiPietro. It's going to be interesting to see if he can rise to that challenge. If Guelph can get a lot of pucks in and get some shots and a lot of opportunities in close on DiPietro to bang home some rebounds, get pucks in his feet, those kind of things that to result in some of the dirty goals, as opposed to, you're not going to beat Michael DiPietro on a lot of perimeter shots. There's no question about that. So you're going to have to beat him from 10 feet and in. And if they get those types of opportunities and create a lot of chances like that, I like Guelph's chances here. But this is a team that has rolled through the playoffs. They have dominated everyone they've faced. And are they battle tested enough to really respond to a team that's been through the wars and absolutely clawed and has had their back to the wall 7 times with facing elimination to win all of those games? It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out.
You make a good case. I'm going to pick Ottawa in 6.
I'm going to pick Guelph in 7.
I'm torn. I picked Guelph in Ottawa. Actually, Guelph in the West right from round 1.
Yeah.
I had Ottawa or Niagara in the East. I'd love to see Guelph pull it out, but I'm going to go Ottawa in 7. I think Michael DiPietro is going to be the difference maker.
So that's basically our time for this week here. Next week we have longtime pro John Very with us. He has a lot of great stories. Looking forward to that. And also should put a shout out that from May 10th to 12th is the Canadian Sledge Hockey Championships out of Elmira. So if you're in the area and you want to catch some great hockey that way, catch the Sledge Hockey Championships in Elmira. So that's it for our time this week, and we'll catch you next week on Hockey Talk.